Hello, this is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society in Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. I am John D. Webster.
And I am Mark Hamilton. We want you to know that if you don't believe in God, you are not alone. Right here in East Tennessee, you can find free-thinking atheists and agnostics. This is a show for them and for people committed to a life rooted in science and free of supernatural beliefs.
On today's show, we have with us Freethought musician and performer Shelley Segal. Thanks for being with us today, Shelley.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Before we get to grilling you, we want to tell the viewers a little about the sponsors of our show, and we have some news items as well.
The Atheist Society in Knoxville frequently has a fun meetup at a bar or eatery. Tonight's meetup is at Barley's in the Old City, starting around 5:30. Look for the silver-jacketed copy of The God Delusion standing upright on the table, and as Matt Dillahunty at Atheist Experience says, everyone is welcome to our happy hour for food, drink, and conversation. However, if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't.
The Rationalists of East Tennessee have several regular monthly meetings. The first and third Sunday mornings of the month are usually lectures with lively roundtable discussions. The second Sunday, we hold the Skeptics Book Club. On the fourth Sunday, we are mixing it up. Sometimes with a get-together we call a reflections meeting. It features a potluck, lunch in someone's home. Sometimes we meet to play board games or similar activities. Now and then, we have a blood drive as well.
Later in the show, we will give you our websites to visit for additional details, including times and locations. We have some items in the news on which to comment.
After 50 years of Christian privilege in Franklin County, Indiana, secularism will join Nativity on display this winter. In a September 25th, 2015 press release, the Freedom from Religion Foundation announced that it will display a Bill of Rights nativity and a winter solstice banner this year to counter a nativity scene that has stood alone on public property for half a century. FFRF has been battling the county over this nativity since 2010.
During the course of litigation, the county decided that rather than stay neutral on religion, it would open a public forum for displays and passed an ordinance regulating the use of the courthouse lawn by community residents and organizations. Freedom from Religion Foundation has asked to put up a display in that new forum. In addition to the Freedom from Religion Foundation display, the Satanic Temple will also have a display. Last week, the county commissioner introduced a resolution that brought Blount County, Tennessee, some national notoriety.
Yes, a Blount County commissioner proposed for inclusion on the agenda of the regular October commission meeting a resolution condemning judicial tyranny and petitioning God's mercy.
However, at the actual meeting on Tuesday night, commission members voted against setting the agenda. The meeting ended before it started, and this prevented any discussion of the resolution along with the rest of the county business for the month. The commissioner who made the motion to adjourn later said that he did not want his county to be used as a platform for hate.
Some are claiming that the maneuver was planned by some of the members in advance to keep the resolution off the public record and avoid further controversy. The Blount County mayor is calling a special meeting this evening, but this resolution is not on the agenda. The commissioner who authored and proposed this resolution is extremely disappointed with the outcome and say it is likely that they will reintroduce it in the future.
Lastly, two in the news events that tie together. Further developments regarding Rowan County, Kentucky's most famous bigot come to us today under a segment we call Good Pope, Bad Pope. A lot of free thinkers feel that Francis has been a welcome change, but then
just after Pope Francis left the United States, it was reported that the Kentucky clerk, who has been jailed for failing to abide by the Supreme Court decision and the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution, claimed to have met privately with Pope Francis. Turns out that, while the New York Times, the Washington Post, and NPR reported the meeting as private, the Vatican denies it. The LA Times headline sums it up with the question, did Kim Davis add liar to her resume with Pope meeting claims? The press office of the Holy See, that would be the Vatican, made the following statement. I'll do my best with this. The brief meeting between Mrs. Kim Davis and Pope Francis at the Apostolic Nunciature in Washington, D.C., has continued to provoke comments and discussion. In order to contribute to an objective understanding of what transpired, I'm able to clarify the following points. Pope Francis met with several dozen persons who have been invited by the Nunciature to greet him as he prepared to leave Washington for New York City. Such brief greetings occur on all papal visits and are due to the Pope's characteristic kindness and availability. The only real audience granted by the Pope at the Nunciature was one of his former students and his family. The Pope did not enter into the details of the situation of Mrs. Davis, and his meeting with her should not be considered a form of support of her position in all of its particular and complex aspects.
The clerk of Rowan County, Kentucky might want to consult with the once disbarred judge in Alabama. He has a rock, and written on it is 10 messages, one of which is applicable to his situation. I think that's about all the news we can give you today. Let's interview Shelley. Today we're fortunate enough to have with us Shelley Segal. Am I pronouncing that right?
That's correct, yes.
Awesome.
Not like Steven Seagal.
Yeah, that's what I originally thought it was. But I'm glad
Give my own kind of ass whooping.
glad you corrected me.
This will cover some of our own backgrounds real quick, so you know us. I'm a former Jehovah's Witness.
Wow.
We were encouraged to keep to ourselves. We didn't celebrate holidays or birthdays. Christmas, Thanksgiving. We did refuse blood transfusions.
Wow.
And I left when a lot of these, I characterize them as old-fashioned beliefs and ways of looking at things. The worldview just wasn't compatible with modern progressive thinking, I think, which is a better direction for people to take.
How did you get access to those ideas that challenged the worldview you were
they say they don't discourage higher education or interest in the subjects other than what they push on you, but it's they kind of make you afraid to do such a thing without having it in writing, it's, so to speak, is what I would say. And so it's just, the way they ask you to treat people, you're either trying to convert them or you're trying to be no part of associating with them. Just didn't seem right, I guess, at the core, and things like you're treating women as secondary and things like that just start rubbing you the wrong way, I think, if you really think about it, or at least I would hope, most people. So. John.
And I'm a former Southern Baptist. My actual deconversion experience involved me reading the Bible cover to cover, and that's actually what turned me into an atheist.
Yeah.
You care to share some of your background and perhaps your deconversion experience if you have one?
Sure. So I was brought up in a Jewish religious family, and I'd say the level, like a medium level of observance at home. So like maybe akin to a conservative Judaism over here. But my family didn't identify as conservative. We identified as traditional, and we still went to an Orthodox synagogue every week. So I was exposed to like different tiers of Judaism, and I also went to a Jewish school all the way from kindergarten up to graduation, and I was part of a Jewish Zionist socialist youth group when I was a kid, and learned about Israel and Judaism and religion. And as I got older and went through the program, I started to run programs for young children myself and teaching them, about the same things. So it was a really big part of my life. I actually learnt how to sing and perform in my father's Jewish wedding band. So I didn't expect to be making freethought music with that kind of a start. But it was a really big part of my life. And when I was 16, I took biology as an elective because I love animals. And I learned about evolution, which was the first time I questioned whether the biblical account of creation was literally true. And it took me about 3 more years of questioning different points will come up. And eventually, at 19, after traveling and seeing a lot of worldview, meeting a lot of different people with a lot of different worldviews, it makes you see your own in a context and realize that it's just as worthy of criticism as all the others.
Right.
And so I came back home after my trip an atheist.
Yeah, I think that's much more eloquent. It's getting out of your bubble and getting exposed to different perspectives.
Yeah.
It does a lot towards kind of, I guess, combating that. I want to say brainwashing. That might be a little too strong.
The indoctrination.
Yeah.
And I think that's why that is frowned upon. Looking outside of what you're taught, anything that challenges that. There are some there are some Jewish communities at home. I'm from Melbourne, Australia, where they're not allowed to watch television. Some of the more extreme communities not allowed to watch television, not allowed to use computers. So it's all to kind of protect you from having that worldview challenged. And I didn't challenge it until the first thing came through. When you're a child, you generally trust the narrative that your elders and your family and your school, and if you're getting the same narrative from all of the elders around you, then you're gonna trust that and take it for granted a bit, actually.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought that would be like a prevalent, I guess, religion in Australia. I guess I had no concept of that. So that's interesting.
Well, I think it's a small community, maybe 100,000 people in the whole country. But that's something I noticed that's different here. In Australia, the culture is a lot more secular. So we don't, have as much religion in our politics. But at the same time, there are a lot of pockets of small religious communities where, it is very hard to challenge or can be very hard to challenge your beliefs, especially because you're so dependent on that small community within a wider secular culture.
Yeah. Well, here we use the term free thought, and secularism also kind of, we talk about things that way, and that's kind of, it stems from the days when blasphemy laws could punish someone for saying there is no God. So is that how you talk in Australia, kind of about ideas like this, or?
No, I don't think we have blasphemy laws. We have a separation of church and state that's similar in wording to you. I think it's interpreted a bit differently because we do have some activities that wouldn't work, that wouldn't pass here. For instance, we have a school chaplaincy program in my state, or a national school chaplaincy program actually, that provides funding. The federal government provides funding to put chaplains in the public school system. Oh, wow. So I know that would never fly here. So while it's less secular, while it's more secular in many ways, there's a very strong, motivated, powerful religious lobby that are getting legislation passed in their favour.
Right. Well, it's interesting how it creeps in different ways in different cultures, to overstep its bounds a little bit more than it's meant to.
And I guess because it's not as overt as it is here, a lot of mainstream kind of secular people don't see it as an issue as much as they would here because they don't. They don't experience it as much in the media.
Well, I think here the public figures have a hard time kind of standing up against or challenging ideas because it seems like that just the majority of people do have some type of belief and they get really upset or offended if you start openly questioning things. Well, and like we just brought up, I mean, we had blasphemy laws, which is kind of crazy to consider.
Yeah, so when are they still in effect in some states?
I don't think so. That's something I'm going to have to claim ignorance on right now. But
I know the UN was looking at, they have blasphemy laws, is that correct? We've got our fact checker in, in the
getting
corner.
a nod, yeah. Well,
what I love is, for me, being able to, live in a country. You guys have a fantastic freedom of speech. We've got, pretty good freedom of speech. Sometimes they don't let certain people into the country if they don't want, what they're saying to affect the public. So it's not as fundamental as the freedom of speech here, but I still feel safe and free in my own country to kind of question these beliefs that people hold sacred and to sing these ideas that, for me, it's empowering to be able to, kind of satirize or criticize beliefs that used to be important to me, and I have that freedom to do so, even though it could be considered blasphemy by a large chunk of the population.
Well, and it's very direct criticism. It's not even kind of woven in, sometimes subtly, sometimes not. And I think like some of my favorite works by artists, who don't stand out as like free thought or secular artists. You can still kind of see hints of, but I wouldn't say they're afraid, but they don't want to come right out and speak out against the kind of things that I think that.
Well, once you make that, draw that line, you're going to polarize people. And actually, the first album that I made was called an Atheist album, and I released it just a couple of years after I became an atheist. And I'd written a whole concept album about my new worldview because it was such an exciting time for me. I was having all these new realizations about the world and having to rebuild my worldview from scratch, basically.
Right.
And it was such an exciting time that I was writing so much about it, and I wanted to call it an atheist album. And a lot of people, my family and friends, and some industry people were concerned that that would have a really negative effect on my music career. But I felt really strongly that it was important and a positive thing to associate the word atheism and atheist with something positive and creative like music and art, and kind of dispel the negative connotations that we get from that word.
Right. Yeah. I think that's something we'll keep going back to as we talk, is getting behind something you believe in, and that, and if you feel strongly enough about it, it's kind of, well, whatever, wherever it leads, you just kind of have to go with it. You don't want to compromise, so your feelings on a matter, and it's something like atheism is a big step, and it, associating something positive with it was important too, and it's. Well, we have kind of a perspective here on where music is or what happened to it recently here in the States. I would say recently, after the September 11th attacks in 2001, there was a tremendous intrusion of religion in our politics, and radio stations had to change to include more religiously associated material or jingoism, nationalism, to try and rally people, make them feel better, in a time when someone can question, I think, mortality and things like that, with catastrophe like that. That they kind of, people took it upon themselves to comfort people, whether it's true or not. That's kind of religion creeps in and tries to make people feel better. But so in Australia, or do you know of anywhere where your music gets airplay? Because you brought up the concern that it would kind of limit your audience, or people thought it would. Has it?
No, I don't think so. I think that for a lot of people it's resonated really strongly, because one of the most powerful experiences you can have, one of the most powerful experiences I've had is when my worldview is reflected back at me in music, and it's so validating to feel understood. One of my favorite pieces of feedback was someone that wrote, they heard my album and it was like I was singing the way they saw the world, and it made them feel beautiful. And I think that's why it's such a comfort, and why what you were talking about, how people were playing that music to comfort people in a difficult time, because when you feel understood, when you feel like you can reflect on your worldview in that way, it's really comforting, and it's a beautiful thing. That's one of the special gifts of music, I guess.
Yeah, it's a shame that I think it happens a lot when religion is brought into something, and people give credit to God for things or take comfort in God, when really what's really amazing is how people support each other, and how someone, we don't have to unite in the belief of some kind of divine creator or a supernatural belief. We can support each other. Just sometimes being there for each other has a huge impact, and even if we don't have to think the same way, but we don't have to rally under that weird idea, that God's going to be there for us. That just, I just don't think it's necessary. But John, I feel like I've taken over. Going over the discography here, I think there's some good questions kind of following up. So your an Atheist album, it says from your website, it's from 2011 when you released it. And then after that, maybe this was, I got 2012 Run with, is that an EP or a single?
No, that was just a single that I sang on for another artist.
Okay. Well, so when's your next album? Would that be an Easy Escape?
No, that would be Little March.
Little March, okay.
In 2013, I was incredibly fortunate to get to do some songwriting with a fantastic singer-songwriter and guitarist from the States, Adam Levy. He's fantastic, Americana, folk, jazz, blues player. He played with Nora Jones and Tracy Chapman. He's amazing. You should totally check him out. I was really lucky. We got to do a writing session together and spent a week.
Did he reach out to you? Or
No, the producer of my first album, an Atheist album, who's a Christian, by the way.
Wow.
Actually, just as an aside, he said that he wanted to make this album even though he didn't, agree with it ideologically. He thought whether it makes people agree or disagree or change their mind or, further validate what they believe, at least it will make them think. And that's what he wanted to do, which I have so much respect for.
Yeah.
I thought it was really cool. Anyway, he put me in touch with Adam Levy, and we spent a week together talking about life and writing songs. And that was an amazing experience. That was my second album.
And then a year after that?
And then a year after that, so last year I released An Easy Escape, which is a bit of a breakup / travelling album. And my first single from that was called Morocco. And I was a bit of a controversial song. I was writing about my experiences in the country and kind of, I guess, showing the contrast between what it was like for me as a tourist having this easy, fun time with what it was like for some of the local people that were offering that time and that experience to me, and I guess questioning my place there. And so I was referencing some of the, more complicated issues that the country faces, like drug abuse and child poverty and sexual inequality. And by referencing these things in the song, it drew a bit of ire from the locals. I found an article written in one of the major press blogs there that said, Australian singer-songwriter denounces the Kingdom of Morocco.
Oh my goodness.
Which I didn't do. But one of my favourite responses was from the Moroccan World News, and it was an opinion piece that said, music is a great way to start a conversation or a discourse about complicated topics. And I wholeheartedly agree, and that's something that is important to me to try and do with my music, is start a conversation. And I hope even with my free thinking music, for the people that it doesn't resonate with, that at least it can start a discussion or give them an insight into what a worldview of someone who doesn't believe is like, in a less threatening way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your music can disarm someone, get them to consider something maybe they hadn't
A
before.
4-minute uninterrupted opinion, I like to call it, which you rarely get.
Do you write some, most, or all of your material?
I write all of my material.
Awesome.
Yeah. Except when I'm doing a co-write, which I mentioned, say, that collaborative album with Adam. Yeah.
And so now you have this year the Strange Feeling EP.
Yeah, as an EP, working with a new producer, and it's been amazing. The single that we've got out at the moment, Sidelined, is a song about body image and aesthetic expectations.
Yeah, it's something that people, regardless of belief, I think don't speak out enough about. In music, I think it's a unique topic. Not reserved for the mainstream, but it's important. It's something everyone deals with every day.
Yeah.
And struggle with. My favorite song going through your catalog was Eve.
Oh, great.
I really liked it, and that's off an Atheist album.
Yeah.
Right? That's the lead track, I believe. I really liked how you mentioned influences like Ani DeFranco, and there was another artist that that song reminded me a lot of her work, and then I really liked the what it talks about and what it asks you to consider, whether you agree or not, which is something that just keeps coming back up. But I really love it. I think it's a great song. So I was wondering if you could play it for us.
I'd love to. This song is called Eve, and it kind of describes my experience as a young woman in Judaism. And I was telling you a bit about, my background of that different tiers of Judaism. So the synagogue that we went to was an Orthodox synagogue, and that means that we had gender segregation. So the women would sit upstairs and the men would sit downstairs. And if you couldn't make it upstairs as a woman, you could sit up the back with a curtain in front of you. And as a woman, you weren't allowed to participate in leading the service. You weren't allowed to read from the Old Testament, which is what the whole service revolves around. In Orthodox Judaism, a woman's voice is not allowed to be heard unaccompanied. Women and men aren't allowed to touch it in public unless they're married. At the school that I went to, despite being more liberal than my synagogue, there was a prayer that we said every morning, even from primary school, a call and response between the boys and the girls, where the boys would say in Hebrew, "Dear God, thank you for not making me a woman."
Wow.
And we would answer back, "Dear God, thank you for making me what I am." And so there's all these flashes in my memory of, what it's like to be a woman and what this tradition tells you about yourself, your role. And I heard a defense from a lot of the religious women themselves, which is, no, we're not less. We're just different. But different is still prescribed and defined. And I don't want to be defined. I don't deserve to be defined by an accident of my birth or by, outdated tradition that actually is quite violent, the text towards women. So this song talks about, from a religious woman's perspective, with a bit of sarcasm, how Old and New Testament scripture define women and women's roles. The Bible tells me I was made for and from man, and I must do for him everything that I can. I must surrender to his will. I must submit. I can't make the household decisions, 'cause I am unfit. It tells me my place with everlasting grace. The Bible tells me I must be silent, you can't hear my voice. My role has been divinely defined, and I have no other choice. I may not be a teacher of man, I must cover up my shame. These are the laws of the one who in vain I cannot name. He tells me my place with everlasting grace. And my punishment for wanting to learn is a painful birth from which I may not return. The Bible tells me that I am unclean. I am impure, you cannot touch me, and it has nothing to do with where I've been. It is part of who I am. It is because I corrupt man. I was asking for it just by being a woman. He tells me my place with everlasting grace. And my punishment for wanting to learn is a painful birth from which I may not return. The Bible tells me I was made for and from man, and I must do for him everything that I can. I must surrender to his will. I must submit. I can't make the household decisions, 'cause I am unfit. It tells me my place with everlasting grace. Yeah, it tells me my place with everlasting grace.
That's great.
Thank you.
You're the real deal, right? That's beautiful.
Thank you.
What an honor to sit next to you. I'm like, yeah. to see it performed live. I wish it translated as well through the TV. But beautiful.
Thank you kindly.
Right.
Well, we both know our Old Testaments, don't we?
When you were kind of explaining it leading up to it, it's a lot of ideas. I don't feel like the Jehovah's Witnesses are as extreme, but a lot of it is very similar, and it's so hearing how, women themselves be complacent in the religion is so.
And defend it.
Yeah,
And
it's upsetting.
this is your role. It's uplifting. It's an honor.
Yeah.
If I wanted it to be, then it would be uplifting. If that's my choice, it's an uplifting choice. But it has to be a choice.
Yeah,
And,
right.
they're beautiful, well-meaning people that I grew up with in my community. But it's amazing how just looking through a prism as the foundation of everything can skew your moral compass so far. I mean, I grew up in that, and went to that synagogue every week, and didn't really until I left my religion and had some distance from it. I didn't find it as abhorrent as I do now, because you're looking at it through this lens.
You're so articulate. You've thought a lot about these things and have talked about them a lot and kind of honed. It's good. It's refreshing. I love it. Well, is there? There's a good question here. I thought. Do you have a favorite song or something that especially strikes you that
Of someone
your
else?
work,
of my
your
work.
own work?
Yeah. One of my favorite songs to sing is, I wrote it, just after I'd left my religion. I was starting to deal with certain ideas that I'd escaped, kind of growing up with a religious worldview, like the idea of my own mortality. Obviously, I realized that I was going to die, but I really believed in heaven. And I really felt it was so true that one day I would see my family again, the family that I'd lost, and I'm very close with my family. So that was like a big comfort to me, that one day, even after I lost my parents, I would get to see them again. And so kind of dealing with that at age 19, 20, that's not a reality was, very challenging internally. And you have this really clear idea of what your meaning and purpose is, or the meaning and purpose behind everything. And so to have that kind of yanked away, forces you to confront things. And this song's kind of written in response to that, and it talks about our insignificance. So if we look at the universe, we see actually it's a very cold and uncaring place. The inevitable heat death that's coming, our galaxy heading towards another galaxy. The universe is not centered around us. It will not hear our cries into the night. We are cosmically insignificant. But at the same time, despite this lack of inherent meaning and purpose, we have a real world significance, because the way that we interact with each other right here, right now, in this life, in this world, has a tangible impact that is profound. The way we think, what we believe, the way that we speak to ourselves and to each other builds the world around us, and I can't think of anything that is more meaningful or significant than that. And so this song, I like to contrast our cosmic insignificance with our real world significance. And this song is dedicated to Christopher Hitchens, and it's called Apocalyptic Love Song for Hitchens. One day the sun is going to die. For us it means no more sunsets to the universe, just one less star in the sky. And almost all who ever lived have already died. Countless stories of love and war and hope and pain now silently side by side. And yes, I understand that my whole life is just a blink of an eye, and the history of the earth is with each moment that goes by. But this moment that I am with you, it feels like time has stood still. It feels somehow like it matters, and that it always will. In 1 billion years, the oceans will dry, while somehow life may continue. It will not be known to you and I. To think we are so important is an obvious crime. We know that we are specks on a tiny dot, hurtling through space and time. And yes, I understand that my whole life is just a blink of an eye, and the history of the earth is with each moment that goes by. But this moment that I'm with you, it feels like time has stood still. It feels somehow like it matters, and that it always will. And yes, I understand that my whole life is just a blink of an eye, and the history of the earth is with each moment that goes by. But this moment that I'm with you, it feels like time has stood still. It feels somehow like it matters, and that it always will.
So that's
One of my favorite songs that you do is Gratitude.
Oh, yeah.
One of the reasons why it's one of my favorite songs that you do is because I'm frequently told, and I think atheists are frequently told, that we can't experience gratitude because we're not grateful to God. We can be grateful to other people and ourselves and, things that happen to us. That's one of my favorite songs that you do is Gratitude.
Thanks. Yeah, me too. That song, it's about gratitude and also holding on to a sense of gratitude in the face of all of the challenges that life brings us, like mortality and suffering. But I wrote that song after visiting the stromatolites on the west coast of Australia. The stromatolites were the earliest life forms on the planet, and they existed 3.5 billion years ago, and they were a cyanobacteria that lived in the ocean, and they had a chemical reaction that released oxygen, and so these little bacteria were responsible for the oxygenation of the early Earth, and they exist in a modern form today. And I went to visit them, and they calcify and they build up, and they over thousands of years they form rock-like structures. So they just look like rocks, but they are responsible for the whole of life on Earth. And so I went there to visit them, and I felt overcome with this sense of gratitude to the rocks, which I knew was crazy because I whispered, "Thank you, rocks."
It's a great backstory. It's a great backstory.
But it actually made me really feel closer to religious people in that moment, and understand that sense of awe and wonder and transcendence and desire to be grateful and appreciate it's beautiful because it's inherent in all of us. Well, I think most of us, and actually that is something that should unite us despite our different worldviews. We just attribute it differently, and it's such a shame that it can be so divisive, because it's a beautiful feeling, and I think it's really common to all of us and part of the human experience.
Yeah, it's like people who aren't atheists or who still believe think that once you stop believing, you give up feelings and you give up caring about anything. And it's for me, it was the opposite. It felt like I cared more. It mattered more.
Yeah.
It seemed, But
they say, how do you get up in the mornings?
Yeah.
What do you get up in the morning for?
yeah, you try, just
At least coffee. No. I'm not even a coffee drinker. But
you put it so well. There's so much thought behind every song, at least so far. I'm blown away. That's amazing.
Thank you.
We're going to have to take a break pretty soon, right? To have the sponsors go through. And let's see. We'll go ahead and get that started.
In case you're just tuning in, this is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. Freethought Forum is funded jointly by them and by individual contributions.
Shows are live most every Tuesday from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern on Knoxville Community Access Television, Channel 12 or Channel 194, depending on your local cable network. Tell your out-of-town friends to see us streaming online at ctvknox.org.
This is a call-in show, and we are live today, October 13th, 2015, and viewers can call in now to the number on the screen with a short comment or question. Call in now while we go to an informative break.
If you live in or around the Knoxville area and are questioning your religious beliefs or simply believe in one less God than everyone else, well, you're not alone. The Atheist Society of Knoxville is a fun and friendly group of people just like you that meets twice a week at a bar or restaurant. We meet every Tuesday night following the show at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria for happy hour. You'll find our group either inside or on the patio. Look for Richard Dawkins' silver-jacketed book, The God Delusion, standing upright on the table. On Fridays, we meet at Agave Azul or the Beard and Beer Market. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't. We all question what we believe at one point in our lives. If this is the time for you, come join us for food, drink, conversation, and fun. Do you find stories of talking snakes laughable? Do you prefer the scientific method over supernatural beliefs? Are you concerned about religious leaders and organizations imposing their values and rules on your body, your family, and the rest of our society? Well, take comfort in the fact that you're not alone. The Rationalists of East Tennessee meets weekly for fellowship and provides a forum for people who support skeptical thinking and rational discussion of these and other issues. To find out more information or to find out about our next meeting, visit us on the web at www.rationalist.org.
And just a quick correction, we are not taking calls. The show will be all about Shelley, and we don't have time for your phone calls because she's such a wonderful guest. We have Shelley Segal with us today in the studio, and at 7 p.m. tonight she'll be playing at a regular Ask Meetup group at Barley's.
To finish up the break message here, the Atheist Society of Knoxville, or ASK, meets 2 times a week. We have an evening meetups for fun, food, drink, and conversation. ASK's purpose is to supply a venue for community, camaraderie, and outreach to atheists, agnostics, free thinkers, and other like-minded persons in the East Tennessee area. Our Tuesday meeting, which we just talked about, is going on now at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria in Knoxville in the Old City.
The host of most months is the Skeptics Book Club. The title of the November book is Consciousness Explained by Daniel C. Dennett, Sunday, November 8th at 2 p.m. The public is invited to participate. You need not have read the book to attend, but of course it helps. Visit rationalist.org to find the rest of the calendar of books and join us at the new location, Books A Million, 8513 Kingston Pike, Knoxville, Tennessee.
All right, let's get back to the good part, right? We'll get back to Shelley. Thank you again for being with us. Two beautiful songs so far. We want to get through at least one more. We'll see how it goes. For our producer here, he had something in the script here, and I think he wanted to see how it went. So we have a gift for you.
Oh.
Let me see if I can get back to the details here. I have an Indian head penny. So I'll try not to make this awkward. I'm going to hand this over to you. All right, I'm going to tell you about it. We have an expression. We say, a penny for your thoughts. Is that kind of ring true for?
It's familiar. I've heard it.
Well, all of our current, that's U.S. currency, but current U.S. currency, it's old, it's ancient. The current currency is now has "In God We Trust," on bills and coins, and it should say, "In God Some of Us Trust," and the rest reason. This coin is for you, and it's from before the defacement was universal across all currency. And it's asking you if you could describe for us what you see on the coin.
So I see 1 cent, and it looks like a shield and a wreath of some sort, and then a person wearing an Indian headdress, and it says United States of America, 1900.
Yeah, I didn't know that such a coin existed. So we're both learning today. But
Thank you very much.
You're from Australia. It seems as if the culture of Australia and the United States is a lot different when it comes to religiosity. For example, Australia recently had an openly atheist prime minister. How would you compare and or contrast the religiosity and the acceptance of open atheism in Australia compared to the United States, having lived in Australia and having toured in the United States?
I think it's very different. At the same time, our cultures are quite similar. You know, England, America, Australia. We get a lot of our entertainment, music, and movies and television is from America. So you know, we really absorb the American culture. So I don't feel any culture shock when I'm here, except when I'm driving down the freeway and seeing all the billboards telling people to hit their children and here'sinu.com. It's like pretty confronting. We don't, like I was kind of saying at the beginning, we don't seem to have that prevalence of the word or witnessing or ministering in the public sphere. And you could you could be an atheist, as Julia Gillard, our Prime Minister of 2 ministerships ago, or 3 now. It's changing very quickly. But you know, she was openly an atheist, and it wasn't a disservice to her. But it wasn't something that she spoke about very often, in the same way that the Liberal leader before Labor got in, John Howard, is quite religious and passed a lot of religious-leaning legislations, but you know, they don't talk about it in politics. Here, you watch the news and everyone says, "Oh, God bless America." Well, you rarely would hear anybody saying, "God bless Australia." I think the government acknowledges that there's no, you know, denominational majority, and so it doesn't make sense to appeal to the public in that way. But as I said before, there's still these pockets of religiosity, and there's still this highly funded, motivated, powerful religious lobby with friends in very high places that are pushing and are getting a lot of legislation going their way, and we just don't hear about it. And I think a lot of people have this idea of Australia as being more progressive in a lot of ways, and we're not. Abortion is not decriminalised in every state. We don't have marriage equality in any states. So the US is ahead of us, despite being such an openly religious country, you know, really ahead of us on some progressive issues. Also, we're not secular in the same way that you are, because we're still part of the Commonwealth. So the head of our state is really the head of the Church of England. And, you know, on our coins, we have the Queen on the head. So it's very different.
Do you have politicians saying things like Australia is the greatest country in the history of the world, like we do here?
No,
I think
that's a unique,
uniquely American phenomenon.
It's pretty amazing. I think it feels like there's this American exceptionalism.
Exactly.
Someone was telling me about it, an Uber driver I had while I was here. What's the idea that this is like God, like a divine, there's like a word for it, I can't remember.
Manifest destiny.
Yeah, manifest destiny. I only heard about that on this tour.
Yeah.
Such an interesting concept.
This like predeterminism or fate or...
Yeah.
Or
it's like a manifest destiny is like that, you know, Americans are the greatest, and it's their responsibility to make everyone believe and do as we say and things like that, and spread our own ideals regardless of whether or not people want to accept them.
So like imperialist.
Yeah.
And world police.
Yep.
Yeah.
What is the creative process like for you? When you get an idea for a song, do you immediately write it down? Are you able to just sit there and say, you know what, I'm going to write a song regardless of whether or not you feel inspired, or do you have to rely on a sudden like epiphany or a moment of inspiration where it just pours out of you? How does that work?
It's
exactly?
pretty much everything you mentioned. It's like a complete mix of approaches. So, for instance, like that song Gratitude that we were talking before, I'm not very good at metaphors. Something has to happen to me literally, like smack me in the face, and then I'm like, oh, that's kind of a metaphor. You know, I went to visit those rocks, and I had this amazing transcendent feeling, and then I was driving home, and all of a sudden all these ideas started to come into my head, and I basically, like, the melody and the lyrics just poured out of me straight away in a way that felt like, you know, I almost had no part in the writing of it, which is an amazing feeling.
It is, like flow, like in the zone or something
yeah,
like that?
Yeah. Or it's it just comes out like fully formed. Sometimes, every once in a while that happens, and you know those are always the good ones. Like you got to tweak them a bit later, but you know, sometimes it will come out even with the guitar part, the melody, the harmony, so the chord structure and the lyrics all at once, which is amazing and few and far between. But yeah, a lot of the time it's an epiphany that kind of happens to me from my real life, from my experiences. And I know almost while I'm in that situation, as it's happening, it's like, this is a song. This has to be a song, because it's this moment from my life that is giving me a reflection. And I think that, you know, we learn so much from our everyday lives and our everyday experiences. That's the information that is constantly coming in about how to interact with people, how to interact with ourselves, how to improve. Every single moment of our everyday mundane lives is, you know, an opportunity to glean wisdom from. And so I like to take what I learn from my experiences. And then sometimes, there's days where you're not feeling particularly inspired and nothing's really hit you in the head, but I still try and write and, might start focusing on a guitar part first rather than a lyric, and then save that later until I've got the lyrics that, I want to use for it. Or sometimes you can tease it out, you can focus. I think that's something I've got better at with age, is just kind of not forcing the process, but goading it a bit, because when I was younger, it was very therapeutic and, I'm feeling this way and I have to get it out. And then you feel better because it's on the page and not inside you. But now I kind of have, a bit of a zone where I can try and tease an idea out of something that I've experienced recently or something that's happened to a friend of mine, and kind of focus on aspects of that and find a way to describe it and glean the wisdom from it.
There you go. Have you ever changed the lyrics to a song, or wanted to change the lyrics to a song? As in, you write a song out, you think it's phenomenal, it's great, which of course it is, and you go to record it, and then after you record it, you're like, you know what, I think I'd like to tweak that a little bit. I think I'd like to change it up a little bit. Has that ever happened to you? That
is a great question. I've got two examples. One is Saved, which is the first song that I ever released, and I love it. It's kind of, I wrote it after an interaction with a preacher in the street who told me that I was going to hell, and I got really angry, and I felt like no one can come into my space and tell me how to live my life. I won't be told how to live my life. And then the song is kind of saying that and criticizing the doctrine, and also asking questions. How do you know that this is true? Does your God deserve to be worshipped if he's sending me to hell? And being quite accusational. And I was really careful not to make statements and phrase all the verses as questions. How do you know this? Is this true? And putting the thought behind that there. But and even though it's my favorite song, and I know that it really resonates with people because it's empowering to be able to stand up for yourself out loud. It really is. So I'm so happy with that song. But when I look at it now, I see there's a bit of that, us and them mentality, because it's like, you think you can tell us how to live our lives. And while that does exist, I don't want to be playing into the us and them dichotomy. I think that doesn't really help anything. So it's hard because, that reflected how you felt at the time, and maybe your wisdom as you get older changes your perspective a bit. So I wouldn't write that now, but also I wouldn't change it. Yeah. But it kind of makes me, not cringe a little bit, but, reconsider or just understand the context that I was coming from. And then the other example is when I did change some lyrics, and it was before I'd recorded it. My father, who is the president of the synagogue that I used to attend, that my family go to, we run a record label together, and we put out all my music. So he, even as the president of an Orthodox synagogue, has supported putting an Atheist album out there, which is pretty amazing because he's a humanist and a feminist, and he believes in, well, maybe he wouldn't use that word, but he believes in equality too. And so what we did before I put out the album was we went line by line by line through each of the lyrics, and he argued with a lot of them. I didn't change them except for one, which is in a song called Afterlife, where I was saying that basically saying that people were lying. And he said, they're not lying if they believe they're telling the truth.
Yeah.
So he argued about that, and I changed it a little bit, but then I liked the lyrics that I changed it to.
There you go. Have any of your songs surprised you in the way they were received, in the way in which they've been received?
We want to make sure we get one in. Maybe we should. Maybe you should perform your current single, and then we can talk about it.
Yeah. So this is Sidelined, which I was telling you about before, about aesthetic expectations. You want a skinny lover. You want a skinny lover. And so I find I have the wrong body. I have the wrong body. Even though I have the right mind. You want a skinny lover. You want a skinny lover, and that's perfectly fine. But it means you will always want some other body more than you'll want mine. More than you'll want mine. But this is familiar, it's who we've become. Slaves to aesthetic, this is the tune that we hum. Can we change who we are? Can we remove the filter from over our hearts? If you're not beautiful, you'll be sidelined. Can we let go of our pride, of how we look on the outside? Anyways, I thought love was supposed to be blind. Be blind. You want a skinny lover. You want a skinny lover. And so I find I have the wrong body, even though I am the perfect kind. But this is familiar, it's who we've become. Slaves to aesthetic, this is the tune that we hum. Can we change who we are? Can we remove the filter from over our hearts? If you're not beautiful, you'll be sidelined. Can we let go of our pride, of how we look on the outside? Anyways, I thought love was supposed to be blind. Be blind. For the first time in my life, I wish I was somebody else. All those bottles of teenage self-consciousness come tumbling down from the shelf. But this is familiar, it's who we've become. Slaves to aesthetic, this is the tune. This is the tune that we hum. Can we change who we are? Can we remove the filter from over our hearts? If you're not beautiful, you'll be sidelined. Can we let go of our pride, of how we look on the outside? Anyways, I thought love was supposed to be blind. Be blind.
Wonderful.
And you're going to be with us tonight
Yes.
at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria at 7 p.m. You've got, you should come check it out. We got to wrap this up, right, guys? In record time.
It's time to start wrapping things up. Get out your pen and paper. This has been Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. I am John D. Webster.
And I am Mark Hamilton. Please send us feedback. Leave voicemail at 865-272-9060 or email us at freethoughtforum@yahoo.com.
You can see this show. On Tuesdays from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time on this Knoxville station, and at 2100 Greenwich Mean Time at ctnox.org.